Coming up on 1 year from right now, I went on one of the most amazing adventures. I got to spend 2 weeks on an HX ship as we explored Greenland. It was spectacular, and I'm going to share with you now that adventure. About adventure travel, it goes beyond sightseeing. It's about engaging deeply with the destination, often quite actively. Soft adventure includes things like guided hikes or cultural tours, while expedition style means trekking, kayaking, or polar expeditions. Expeditions are for curious travelers, and there were so many of every age group on board. Some were traveling in groups, others were traveling solo. We flew directly from Newark to Nook. It was a very short flight. When we arrived, we had time to wander around, and we had quite the immersive experience. This was quite late at night. This was going on around 11 o'clock, and it was just a picture of a typical home perched up on a cliff. So, when it comes to expeditions, I really don't want to pick on the big guys, the big ships, but by virtue of their size, they just can't get into the smaller, unique ports and communities that an expedition ship can reach. With an expedition ship, you don't just cruise by, you engage with the destination. There are boots on the ground, a privilege reserved for passengers on these smaller ships. While the MS Fridtjof Nansen, our ship, can carry a maximum of 490 passengers, it's highly unlikely every available berth would be in use. When you have fewer people, there's a greater ease of movement around the ship and access to the various activities that are offered. Typically, you'll be transferred by zodiacs from the ship to land. Occasionally, in larger, more equipped communities, they may have a pier or a dock. In those instances, the lifeboats are used as tenders. Now, this slide, it came directly from HX, and it speaks to sustainability. And it might be possible for other expedition providers to have more expedition gear or have more lavish and wasteful focuses on luxury. It's all about your position, where you're positioning yourself and what you want from your experience. But all that comes at a cost. And let's just say that adventure, comfort, and sustainability are at the heart of HX. And these 5 bullets came from one of their slides. Most of the images you'll see are mine, but I've added their bullets. And next up is a little bit about them. They've been around for over 130 years, and they're really into boots on the ground. They focus on deep immersion, not just observation. They have science forward explorations, really keep you busy if you want to be busy. They have onboard science centers that are equipped with labs and high-tech gear. There's citizen science. Guests can actively contribute to real research. There's expert expedition teams that are always available. You've got biologists, geologists. They're providing genuine educational experiences. The fleet hybrid power runs partially on battery, so you have lower emissions, lower noise. Green practices, there's the elimination of single-use plastics, and they really do prioritize sourcing from local communities. They prioritize educational depth and sustainability over traditional luxury, and the ship is a tool for exploration. So next, we'll look at what do you get with an all-inclusive expedition? Well, they're big ticket items. Depending on where you're visiting, you may be looking at anywhere from 89 US to 250 US. There are 2 optional excursions that I went on. Everything else was included. The first was a boat ride through the Ilulissat Ice Fjord, a UNESCO World Heritage destination known for its outstanding natural beauty and its scientific importance in understanding ice cap glaciology and climate change. I chose the boat, but for a significantly different cost, I could have chose a small plane. I enjoyed the boat. And what do you expect? Well, anywhere from 90 to 490 guests, but again, it's unlikely you'll see 490. On board, they'll give you use of trekking poles, muck boots, snorkel gear. There's Starlink Wi-Fi. It is a very casual atmosphere. There are no dress codes. The ships are purpose-built and they have a Scandinavian design. There's the science that I spoke about, the labs, locally sourced. It was just an amazing experience, all inclusive. My room was incredibly comfortable. There was a small desk where I kept my computer, and from there, I even was able to attend an online Zoom meeting thanks to the Starlink. Our ship, unlike many other cruises, I was not limited to one device. So that made it very easy for two-factor authentication. I also gave FaceTime tours of the ship to friends and family back home. The bottom image is one of the two hot tubs. They're very popular given that the outside temperature was above freezing and the sauna was literally only steps away. Dining, well, there was the main dining room on, and there's the Fredheim, which is more dynamic fare. It was open for lunch and dinner. And I have to say they had some of the best milkshakes you've ever had. And then there was Lindstrom, which is open to anyone for fee, but if you are in a suite, it does come with your suite room. Sorry. Expeditions suites. The information here all comes from HX, so I just plopped it in there because it's pretty straightforward and it's quite detailed. So, why Greenland? It's remote, it's unspoiled, and it's one of the few true frontiers left in travel. It offers travelers the perfect mix of cultural encounters and dramatic natural landscapes. A bit about it. Political status? It's an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. Geographically, Greenland is firmly in North America. It sits almost entirely on the North America tectonic plate. The communities are so remote that you cannot get there any way other than by water or air. When should you visit Greenland? Well, it all depends on what you want to see. Obviously, you're not going to go in the winter. It was quite lovely there when we were there in the month of July. It is very remote. It's unspoiled. And who's it for? Well, it's just for about everyone. While we were there, Herminia celebrated her birthday. Note that the candles weren't lit. You're not going to get your candles lit on a ship. She was pretending to blow them out. How it started. Oh my word. This was amazing. I was so incredibly happy to make my flight. Let me say I had round trip flights. Part of the package were from Newark to Nook. I was to arrive in Nook one night before boarding the ship. My flight from Toronto the day before was canceled. I immediately called my colleagues at the office to see if my friends could get me on any flight, within a 4-hour drive of Newark. There was nothing available. I had myself facing two options. Take the bus or head home, pick up my car, and drive from Toronto to Newark. I was able to purchase the third last available seat on the bus. I was on the overnight bus from Toronto to Newark. I arrived at the airport at 8 a.m. and my bags were dropped with United Airlines at 8:28 a.m. We boarded the flight at 10:30. I didn't care. I was so happy that I made it. There were 2 travelers from Florida that were stranded. Their flight was canceled. They had no options. They ended up flying from Florida to Reykjavik and then on to Nuuk. They arrived in time to make the ship, which made them really grateful that there was that 1 day cushion of time pre-cruise in Nuuk. Even the organizer from HX, he was stuck in the United States. He ended up having to fly to Copenhagen and then on to Nuuk. He also missed the very first day, which was a shame. So here we are. We've arrived in Nuuk. We made our way to our pre-cruise hotel in the heart of the capital. We had time to settle in, wander around. We had a lovely dinner. And then afterwards, we went out and we just stretched our legs. In July, the sun doesn't really set. And so these images that you're looking at right here, they were taken around 11 p.m. And there's more pictures. It was very, very beautiful. During our first full day in Nuuk, meaning the next morning, we were taken on a short walking tour. We stopped by a museum, and then we made our way to small boats to go fishing. We didn't realize as that we were responsible for catching our own lunch. After we left the small boats, we made our way through a meadow to an unmarked building. It was called Catch and Eat Experience. It was absolutely amazing. It's a little Asian Thai inspired restaurant that prepares your fish in 3 different styles. The food was absolutely amazing. It was fresh. It was wonderful. After that, they drove us to the ship. On the left is a view of the sauna, floor to ceiling, windows, just steps away from the hot tub that we looked at earlier. And on the right is a picture of my room. I had a huge bed, had a large sitting area, and a nice place to keep my computer. The first day on board, we were looking at 2 screens, and throughout the rest of the cruise, they were going to display information relating to whatever the expedition team wanted to share with us. Here's a view from my balcony. It just caught my eye. I could see that the whale going up and down, so I just ran out with my camera. At times, the water just shimmered. The shades of blue were so captivating. It just left me spellbound. And here's a picture of a wall of blue-tinged ice. There's some birds that are just sitting there, perched on the ice. It was like they were holding a summit, a conference in the high Arctic upon an ice throne. It was just so. Today we were in Ilulissat, or as they say, icebergs in English, on the west coast of Greenland, approximately 150 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. It has a population of approximately 5,000, and it's known for its UNESCO World Heritage listed Ilulissat Ice Fjord. The fjord is a discharge point for the Shermikujalek Glacier. I hope I said that properly. one of the fastest and most active glaciers in the world, as it moves up to 40 meters each day, halving 10% of all of Greenland's ice, or over 40 cubic kilometers annually. The movement provides for almost constant dramatic parade of massive icebergs, some as tall as skyscrapers. Others often get grounded at the mouth of the fjord before drifting out into Disco Bay into the North Atlantic. Ilulissat was founded on fishing and hunting. Halibut and shrimp are key, though tourism is now the principal industry due to the UNESCO listing. Here's a look at a dog, a very young dog, the only dog allowed above the Arctic Circle is the Greenland dog. It is a very pure breed. South of the Arctic Circle, you'll find all types of pups. You'll find Labradors, many lap dogs, but not to the north. North of the Arctic Circle, all dogs over 6 months of age must be chained, which means this guy was a very young pup. On the left, you'll see a study in Arctic tones, the muted gray of the water, the sky against the colossal textured white of the ancient ice, the immense sheer face of the glacier dominates the horizon, offering humbling perspective of the scale of Greenland's wilderness. And on the right, life and daily industry converge on the waters of Disco Bay. Local fishermen going about their daily work, while a colony of Arctic birds use floating remnants of the glacier as their personal space for gathering. It's a perfect moment of Arctic coexistence. Moments of thick fog were also very common, but this veil was always temporary. The fog would often, on this day, we found ourselves in Umanak. A bit about the dogs. Genetic isolation, over 1,000 years of lineage, which traces back to the dogs brought by the Thule people from Siberia. They share a close genetic link with the earliest known sled dogs. There's minimal mixing. Genetic studies confirm the Greenland dog has maintained its ancestry with minimal interbreeding with modern European breeds. The geographic and legal protection, well, in Greenland, sled dog district above this Arctic Circle, it's illegal to import other dogs. The result is this isolation ensures high genetic purity, preserving the breed essential for traditional Inuit life and the Arctic environment. These dogs are powerful, heavy built, muscular, and designed for endurance and strenuous work. They have a thick double coat to handle the extreme cold, and their undercoat is dense. The outer coat is coarse. They're not known for barking. Howling, yes, but not barking. They're a tireless working dog, known to be bold, energetic, and resilient. They're always needing a job. They're friendly with people, including strangers, but they're not known to be loyal or much of a guard dog. They're independent, so they're not always eager to please. As expected, they're high energy, requiring 2.5 hours of daily intense exercise. Well, we had a sea day here, so they kept us quite busy on board. They provided a themed South American dinner in the Fridtjof restaurant, and there were so many activities to partake in. There was a wildlife watch with the expedition team. There was a lecture on how old is Greenland and where it was in the past, cooking demonstrations, cultural talk. Some people opted to personalize their keepsake water bottle. There was a lecture on seals. There was a lecture on life up there, which was hosted by Alec, who was one of our Greenlandic ambassadors. We had 3 of them on board for the duration of our cruise. Wildlife watches, workshops on manual photography, discovery sessions on feathers. HX goes to Galapagos, so they spoke on that. Then there was Discovery Session, which I stumbled upon. It was Intro to NASA Globe Cloud Observation. I participated in this. It was incredibly interesting. And then we had lectures about what we might expect to see the next day. The next day brought us into Savisiva. This land was very, very rugged. It was the only location where we had to watch our step. And you could see there was wood placed down, so it made it a little easier for us to get around. Immediately visible within the community were flags. They were flown everywhere. Beyond being a symbol of national pride, there's also pride in their living spaces. And we were grateful for the hospitality that was shown to us. We were invited in to see the heart of a Greenlandic home. You might notice something about this. It's spotless. But take a look at the sink. There's no faucet. In Greenland, many communities, especially in smaller or more remote settlements, do not have a piped water system like in the larger towns. Instead, the water is often delivered by truck to household tanks, which is common in towns without full plumbing networks, collected from local water stations or communal tap house where residents bring containers to fill up, or in some cases collected directly from lakes, rivers, or glacial sources, especially in more traditional or remote areas. Back on the ship, a local gentleman came on board to perform a drum song and do storytelling. Only our Greenlandic cultural ambassadors, they understood the story. Our 3 ambassadors were with us, like I said, for the full 2 weeks. There was Alec, the family man, who I believe may have been in his 40s. And the 2 other ambassadors were university age. There was Sitzel, a young woman of Danish descent but raised in Nuuk. And the other ambassador was Hans Peter, and he was from further north in Greenland. July 22nd, the beauty of the ice in Greenland is always captivating. It's so dynamic, it's dramatic in scale, and the colors are striking. The sheer size of the formation are always humbling. The atmosphere is often dramatic with fog frequently present, though it often lifts rather quickly, creating a shifting tapestry of light and shadow across the vast white and blue and green surfaces. Freshly formed icebergs often appear white because they contain a lot of tiny air bubbles, which scatter light. In the image on the left, this is an older, more compressed iceberg. Most of the bubbles have been squeezed out by pressure, revealing beautiful deep hues of green and blue. The dense ice absorbs longer wavelengths of light, the reds, the greens, the yellows, and scatters the shorter ones, the blues and greens, which is why the ice can appear shades of striking greenish blue. On the 22nd, we made our way to the Thule Air Base, now known as the Space Base. The entire community that had been present there had to be relocated. That is now the most northernmost U.S. military installation, the Space Base. Base was renamed Inuit, the traditional name for the area to acknowledge Greenland's cultural heritage. The Space Base is situated about 1,210 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. And it has been all but abandoned. You could see the remnants from when there was community. In 1953, approximately 130 of Thule's residents, part of the indigenous Inuit polar Inuit population, were moved from their ancestral homes to the settlement of Umanak, where the base is now situated. A new village was built about 130 kilometers north. Initially, it was called Tuli, but now it's known as Hana. Sadly, families were given only a few days to gather their belongings, and reportedly, the original homes were burned to the ground. Point of contention, as the Danish government described the move as voluntary. But the people have long stated that it was a forced eviction. Understandably, the relocation caused the community significant hardship and pain as they were moved from their ancestral land. In 2003, a Danish Supreme Court judgment determined the move was officially deemed serious interference and an unlawful act. The affected people were awarded compensation. Although the original Inuit settlement was relocated, some houses remain in good condition. Several are still maintained for workers, visiting personnel, or seasonal use. So now we're in Kanak, and the use of diesel for modern energy has fundamentally altered much of the nation's culture, moving from a direct reliance on harvested resources to dependence on global supply chains and a cash-based economy. Our cultural ambassador, Alex, shared how in his grandmother's day, survival was linked to their hunting success. Seal and whale blubber were the essential energy source for heat, light, and cooking. Running out of these traditional fuels meant she may go hungry and cold. The reliance on diesel generators for electricity and oil for home heating has replaced the daily reliance on nature. Now there is a reliance on technology and external supply. To a degree, this has led to a cash-based economy. In many communities, you'll find that at least one family member must have a salaried employment. This is often the woman, in order to afford fuel, ammunition, and store-bought goods necessary for modern life. This has had an impact on traditional roles and labor. All the communities we visited had satellite and cellular towers, which are powered by diesel generators. Being able to connect globally has further changed social interactions by providing access to outside culture, education, and information. Currently, daily life is dependent on imported fuel, but Greenland is actively trying to transition to a future that leverages its own resources. This includes seeking economic independence from Denmark and developing its own resource base that includes the potential for hydropower and mining of rare earth elements. Greenland is home to some of the world's largest undeveloped deposits of REEF, rare earth elements. The town of Umanak was lovely. It had wide roads, but then again, this is not an old town. This was a town that was established in 1953 following the resettlement from Tuli to make way for the U.S. Air Force Base situated 130 kilometers to the south. Life here is still very traditional, hunting with dog sleds, in kayaks, and with harpoons. This is an essential part of the culture and economy, not just ceremonial, due to the limited and costly nature of imported goods. In Kanak, the general store, and I'm going to try and pronounce it, it's Pirli Su Isop, will receive heavy goods, non-perishable food items, and other essential items like hunting equipment, hardware, etc., delivered by cargo ship. Because heavy sea ice limits access, these large shipments can often only take place twice a year. Perishable goods, such as food, vegetables, are brought in more frequently. However, this is done by air, and these flights are expensive. and they have limited cargo capacity. This leads to significant delays due to the unpredictable Arctic weather. While we were there, we were welcomed by many of the residents. As mentioned earlier, there are very specific laws and regulations for the care and management of Greenlandic sled dogs. To ensure their safety, preserve the breed, protect the dog's welfare. By law, those over 6 months and older must be chained or tethered to a fixed spot when not actively working, as their strong pack instincts and territorial nature can lead to fights, pose dangers to people, and risk interbreeding with other dog populations. Puppies under 6 months old are generally allowed to roam freely within the owner's designated dog area. These practices are particularly strict in the sled dog district, which includes all of East Greenland and the areas north of the Arctic Circle on the west coast. In this district, only the purebred Greenlandic sled dog may be kept, and as mentioned before, importing other dogs is illegal, with rare exceptions for police or service dogs to maintain the breed's purity. Once a Greenlandic sled dog leaves the district, it is prohibited from returning. Sled dogs are traditionally kept outdoors year-round and are well adapted to the Arctic climate, often preferring the cold to the sheltered environments. Their welfare has been a topic of controversy due to the challenges in providing consistent care in remote settlements. Local and international animal welfare organizations work to ensure that the dogs receive adequate food, water, shelter, and particularly for the puppies, veterinary care, which is limited in these regions. Despite the practice of chaining, Greenlandic sled dogs remain highly socialized within their packs and eagerly anticipate working during the season, when they run freely and perform their natural function of pulling a sled. Here we had another day of just exploring Smith Sound. You will see way off in the distance our expedition team located a patch of ice. The team boarded a Zodiac to check it out. The expedition team is made up of individuals selected for the unique areas of expertise. While on board, they and the guests participate in the citizen science projects, and it's an immersive educational experience with workshops and various activities. This was one of our boots on the ground immersive activities. The expedition team arrived. They drilled a few holes to determine the thickness of the ice. Then they reported back. The ice was thick enough for us to stand on. It may not look like much, but I have to tell you, this was thrilling. It really was. Well, this is not the best image. I took this from the screen during one of our lectures. We made it to 78 degrees north. The HX sailing before us, they had gone even further. Our ship, the MS Fridtjof Nansen, is designed as a Class PC6 ship. This refers to its polar class rating that indicates the ship's structural strength, the design, and operational capability in ice-covered waters. She can move through medium first-year ice, which may include old ice inclusions. There are some expedition ships belonging to other companies that are classified as PC5, and they can operate year-round in polar waters. However, very few expedition travelers opt to sail during the colder months. One such ship is Penance le Commandant Charcot. She has a PC 2 polar class. She can operate year-round in polar waters and can break through thick ice up to 2.5 meters thick or more. Impressive. So the next day we are in, I'm going to try and pronounce this one, is Siurapala. It's one of the most northernmost permanently inhabited settlements. It's 1,362 kilometers from the North Pole. Being so far north, the community has 120 days of continuous sunlight in the summer and 108 days of complete darkness in the winter. The population is very small. There are about 68 residents, and most are descendants of Inuit who migrated from Nunavut in the late 1800s. Being so tiny of a community without a school or permanent health care, helipad is vital. The local church has a dual purpose. It's both a school and a public library. This community is remote. There is helicopter access from Kanak, or during the summer months, access by boat. In the winter, the fjords, they will freeze over. Here's an image. You can see Canada, especially on a clear day like we had. Sitting on the Hayes Peninsula across from a narrow body of water from Ellesmere Island. The distance across the strait, known as the Smith Sound in Kennedy Channel, is about 30 to 40 kilometers at its narrowest. Historically, this narrow passage was a route for migration. Many of Siorapalek's residents are descendants from Nunavut, as we had mentioned earlier. I just took this because I loved the way the sun was bouncing off the iceberg. It was spectacular. This is where we kept Alec very busy in this little community, as very little, if no English was spoken. Alec was our interpreter. While many in Greenland can speak English, we were very far north, so we were most grateful for having Alec with us. It really wasn't cold that day. It was summer after all, but the gentleman wore his polar bear pants. For us, he wanted to wear his traditional wear. Polar bear is one of the most effective and natural insulators, making the pants vital for survival during hunting trips and long periods spent on the ice in the high Arctic. Also, they provide excellent camouflage for a hunter waiting by a breathing hole in the ice for a seal. The residents are skilled traditional hunters who rely on the Arctic environment for sustenance and income. Hunting marine mammals like seals, walrus, belugas, narwhals, often with harpoons, and land animals like polar bears, caribou, and Arctic foxes. Life here is uniquely challenging due to its extreme isolation and limited infrastructure. The settlement was very basic, and it had services such as, but it still had services such as electrical power and a small general store. Some young dogs, some chain dogs, and myself with a narwhal tusk. It's called a tusk, but the narwhal's tusk is actually an elongated spiral shaped left canine tooth that can reach between 1.5 and 3 meters in length. It's most common in males, and it functions as a highly sensitive sensory organ that connects directly to the narwhal's nervous system, allowing the animal to detect changes in water salinity and temperature. Scientists also agree it is a secondary sexual characteristic used in dominance displays and to attack mates. Despite the cold, stepping out of the water and into the actual air felt warm. The temperature was 10 Celsius. I had to have a female expedition team member help me as I was wet and I wanted to get into my dry clothes. Once out of the wet clothes, I truly didn't feel cold. But I have to say, the hot shower back in my stateroom was very welcome. We were at sea, so they took us on a tour to look at other staterooms. The top left is very similar to my stateroom, whereas I had a sofa bed. They have 2 chairs there. I had a balcony. That is a window stateroom. The other rooms are suites. Then we had a tour of the bridge and the engine room. With no landings planned, we took to the Zodiac on the July 27th in search of land animals. I believe we spotted an Arctic hare. The image here beautifully illustrates how the Arctic light can transform the landscape, creating an appearance that often is mistaken for being sunset, even when it's just the continuous low angle of the sun. On the 28th, we were in, I wish I could pronounce the town properly. It is a small town of 850 residents, known for its volcanic landscapes and black sand beaches. It's home to the University of Copenhagen's Arctic Station, which is a key hub for research. Its notable landmark, there's an octagonal red church nicknamed the Lord's Inkpot. And the local economy centers on fishing, mostly crab and halibut. It's the birthplace of Razumith Lurdov, creator of PHP, which is a programming language to build dynamic interactive websites, including major platforms like WordPress and Wikipedia. For activities, excellent hiking, especially to the Canute basalt columns, which are towering rock formations created through volcanic activities with lush vegetation, and the angelica plant, and to the glacier where summer dog sledding is possible. It's prime for whale watching, humpback, minke, fin whales in the summer and in the autumn, bowhead whales in the spring. In the summer and autumn, access is usually reached by ferry from Ilulissat or Asiat. In the winter, access is by helicopter due to sea ice. While we were there, we took in a show. Cultural tradition is Greenlandic polka. It originated from a cultural exchange with European whalers and sailors, primarily from Scotland, Scandinavia, and Germany, way back in the 16th century. The foreign visitors introduced various couple, circle, and line dances, such as the jig and the reel, but it was the polka that gained widespread popularity much later, around the 1850s. It's now the most prominent dance in the repertoire. What makes the Greenlandic polka truly unique? Its high energy performance, it's dance at an incredibly fast pace compared to European versions, and it features gender specific steps where men execute rapid stomping steps while women perform smooth gliding motions. Interesting, some of these intricate steps are believed to have been adapted from the Greenland indigenous drum dance tradition. The weather here was incredibly beautiful that day. The patio was packed. There was no available outdoor seating. Many of the homes here are adorned with skulls or horns. There was very, very little to be purchased in this town. Wanting to spend some money in the community, our ship was a mere maybe 5-minute tender ride away. We could have had lunch on board. We opted for fish and chips at the local hotel. And this is what 62.50 Canadian will buy you. Alongside the road, some entrepreneurial women had set up a table and were selling earrings. Many of us stopped to pick up a pair. To be honest, I have to say this was the highlight of my day. These particular dogs are being raised to interact with people. Typically, you are not permitted to touch the dogs, but these amazing pups were the exception. And were they adorable? Next, we were off to Eat, small traditional and geographically unique settlement on the central western coast of Greenland in the Davis Strait. It's located about a kilometer from the mainland and just 2 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. It's a tiny community with about 89 inhabitants. Most primarily live off of fishing and hunting. There's a fish factory, which is the principal employer. There's no natural fresh water. The community is entirely dependent on a desalination plant for its drinking water supply. Like most settlements in Greenland, it has no road connection to any other town. The Royal Arctic Line provides weekly ferry services to nearby settlements. There is a small helipad, but there is no regularly scheduled copter services. Next, we went to a home for Kathy Mitch. And that's where you were invited into a home and you were served coffee and cakes. It was quite lovely. And the town was just very picturesque. The appearance of flowers is not unexpected, but it's often surprising to first-time visitors. The community experiences a short but intense summer during which the Arctic tundra bursts into bloom with resilient, low-flying wildflowers. Game of soccer between the community and the visitors from the expedition ship is well known and a common cultural interaction in the community. The friendly match is often cited as the highlight of the cultural visits offered by the Arctic Expedition cruise lines. It's not your typical soccer pitch. The match was played on a gravel, half-size soccer field in the village. The home team is comprised of the residents. The visiting team is made up of passengers, crew, expedition team members. It was a lot of fun. It was very loud, and it was a means for the visitors to interact directly with the community, and it was a genuine cultural experience. I'm not sure who, but I hear there's a long-standing rivalry that the teams keep track of who won on which expedition visit. This was our last scheduled day. That's key. Just some other beautiful images. There's always so much to see. So we had our last scheduled day. So this is how it ended. I checked my flight. It was on time. We were going to be leaving from Nook the next day into Newark. Oops. It was canceled. The universe had other plans. I like to say we had a bonus day. I was thoroughly amazed with bonus day that was put together by HX. Eventually, we flew home the next day, and then wouldn't you know it, as we were landing in Newark, my flight to Toronto was canceled. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. If you have any interest in Greenland or any other expedition, please do not hesitate. Do reach out. Thank you. Thanks for listening.